Hey, welcome back. Thanks for tuning in to Recruiting Insight. This is the place to be if you want to connect with the most successful recruiters and hiring managers and innovators in the real estate industry. Hey, it's a great day to recruit, and today we're going to be joined by Stephanie Robertstadt. Stephanie is a recruiting coordinator for Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Fox and Roach Realtors. For those of you who don't know, Fox and Roach has been ranked number one for the past 6 years in the Berkshire Hathaway network. They're headquartered just outside of Philadelphia, but they have more than 75 offices spread across Pennsylvania and New Jersey and Delaware. Now, we all know you don't get this big and you don't stay this big without recruiting. Now, as you'd expect, Fox and Roach has been remarkably successful at attracting and growing some of the best agents in the country. Now, to pull something off this substantial, they have over 5,500 agents. It only makes sense that you need a team of talented individuals who are working on recruiting from various angles. Today, we're going to look at just one part of their overall recruiting system, and that's the digital sourcing and hiring of new agents. Stephanie sits at the center of this part of the system, so let's jump in and see how the experts do it. Well, welcome, Stephanie. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know many of our listeners are super excited about the topic today and really getting to hear from somebody who has done so much in the recruiting areas, particularly with a big and prominent company like Fox and Roach.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to come and talk.
Yeah. Can you, as we get started today, can you just tell us a little about your role and how long you've been there and kind of what you do on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, sure. So I've been working with Fox and Roach for about 2 years, and I've been fortunate enough to work with a really great company, really great managers, and I've enjoyed actually getting to learn about this industry, and so. We do a lot of sourcing from some, digital marketing options. We have, a lot of great applicants that are coming through, and so it's just a great way to work with the different folks who are coming through. A lot of people in our pipeline, and having some things to manage with that. So that's how we kind of work through all that.
Okay, so we're gonna kind of geek out on the numbers a little bit today. So most of the people, I think there's the listeners that we have, are wondering how does somebody operate something like what Fox and Roach does at such a high scale and have been so successful at it. So you're one component of this is in just numbers wise each year. Fox and Roach, at least the last couple of years, Fox and Roach has hired about 150 from this channel. Now, there's multiple channels that they work on at the same time, and so probably accounts for anywhere from 15 to 20% of their hires each year. So with that, to get to the 150, you actually they source 3,600 prospects during the year to get there. So how is it that you get from the big 36 top of the funnel, 3,600 top of the funnel down to the 150 that are actually hired?
So we have a great platform that we use. TA-Tex is the system that we use, and it takes basically the folks who are applying from the different different places, whether it's social media or through the websites, through different workplaces, Indeed, and wherever it may be. It's funneled into one bucket for me. And so the TA-Tex then collects all those folks who are applying. And then we have a system of texts and messages that go out to folks with resources and a lot of different helpful information. And then once we've kind of collected those folks, we then will siphon them down into people who are engaged and responding. And then once I've gotten those people to respond, that's when I kind of take over and then discern where they are in this, the different stages of the process, making sure they're in the right stage in the pipeline, and then taking them through the different stages depending on where they are. Some are early in the process, haven't even looked at schools yet, and then some folks are completely finished and ready just to get a job. Yeah. So it's putting them in the right spots and then engaging them through that whole process.
Okay, so let's go back to the top of the funnel. So some of these connections, the initial connections, are made through automation through this system. So you're getting the client or the prospect in this case is getting text. They're getting some follow-ups and stuff. At some point along the way, you're actually engaging them in person, and you're
Right.
primarily doing it through text message.
Yes,
So
that's
okay. So with that, how does that work in a sense? Do you find that the texting is limiting, or do you find that's a pretty good way to connect at that stage?
No, I find it's actually pretty helpful. The clients, the prospects or the candidates will get emails as well. They get a twofold communication. I find the vast majority of people are responding via text anyways, and so I find that that's seems to be what people would prefer to have as a channel for communication. But for me personally, I think it's helpful too because it's a really easy and quick way to engage the prospect, and so that way it's something that we're able to do frequently and with minimal impact, I guess, on their time.
Okay. So I think we think texting. I'm envisioning, you on your mobile phone with your thumbs here, typing out the messages and so forth. Is that the way you're doing it, or is there some other way you're making this happen?
No, so I do not. I don't do that myself. I know some people do that, and I find it actually helpful to have that option to have the system on their phone. I just have it actually on my computer in my office. So I'm not fortunately having to do the little thumb thing, which is good for my thumbs. They're getting old, so
Right.
the keyboard is much better for me. So that's a actually super helpful to me to have it on the computer.
Okay. And then as far as communication, we think of, there's obviously a person could get an email, they can get a text, they can get a call. Do you feel like there's enough good information flow that happens in text? I mean, it's efficient and it's quick, but are you giving up anything on the communication side, do you think?
Not really, because I'm still able to send, obviously we all know about texting, but I'm still able to send links. I'm still able to send, decent information. People don't seem to be hindered by, we're not hindered by characters anymore. So that's great. So people certainly don't, the clients or managers or the prospects don't seem to be hindered by that. And I know actually for our managers who I also will text with find it helpful because certainly when I first started, I know for sure a lot of them were concerned about emails, were like phishing emails or different things. So I know other prospects might have that concern as well, and so texting is another way to kind of make sure we're engaging them and they feel confident doing it.
Okay. So let's pivot a little bit and talk about a little more of the process that you use to bring a person from that first stage. And again, people may engage in the process at various stages for them, right? Some early stage, some maybe in licensing school already, some of them ready to shop around for brokers to hire to interview with, those kind of things. So when you initially connect with a prospect, can you tell us a little about your process? What are you doing? What are you saying? How's the flow of this?
Yeah, so we have different stages of the process, and we have a pipeline. But I also have different tasks that I can set up for myself. I have even like some templates that I have for the different phases. So when I find I'm repeating myself a lot on something, then I'm like, okay, I need to capture that and make that a template because I'm clearly sending that a lot. So those are just some things that help me in my process to make it efficient. But I am also, as I'm using templates and engaging people, again, wherever they are in the process, trying to make it as personal as possible. So trying to remember what we've already talked about, making sure, if they've mentioned something, a timeline or a date or something, that I'm including those in those templates that I've actually kind of pre-made. So I'm not just hitting, template, click, send, and done. Which takes a little longer, but it's a little bit more personal.
Okay. So let's talk about that. Just the balance of obviously we could automate this whole process, right? You could get to where we could even with a little AI, you could get to where you have a machine doing this basically. But I think this it's probably safe to say you would give up something when it comes to connecting with the prospect. Do you find that connection is something that's important? Can you tell me all about that?
I think it's really important. We have a kind of like a pre-screen that goes out to the prospects, and there's just a handful of questions. Super easy. I think it takes maybe 5 minutes, if that, for them to respond to those questions. But to your point, if that's all we did, that wouldn't work to help whittle down and I don't mean to say whittle down like people aren't important, but to help make sure that these people are going to be the right fit for our company and for our managers. And so the personal touch, if you will, of both the texting, but then also phone calls. You had asked about that a moment ago. I do phone calls once once the candidate and I have been engaged, and I know kind of where they are in the process. And typically, I don't do a phone call until they've actually gotten into classes.
Okay.
But both the texting and those calls are ways that I'm able to engage with them, both to their benefit, because then I get to know them a little better, but also to help with the Fox and Roach and making sure we're matching people with a good fit for the company.
Yeah. So tell me a little about the phone call. So obviously at some point in the process when it's a pretty good prospect, they're far enough along in the process that you want to start engaging them in a more thoughtful way. So what's that phone call like? How long is it? And then what are you covering during that phone call?
Yeah, so the phone call also can vary on length. Is also depending on where they are. If they're earlier in the process, I find it actually takes a little longer just because they have more questions. And if it's later in the process, fewer questions, and we can get down to it. But it's about and honestly, one of the first questions I ask them is, what's your vision for real estate? Because it's such an interesting industry in that there's a lot of different things going on, and we're primarily looking for people who are doing this as a job, as a career, not really, people who are doing this on the side, but we have people who do that too. So I'm not suggesting we don't do that also, but we're looking for, a specific kind of person. And I think that phone call is a helpful way for me to get to know the prospects or the candidates a little better to make sure it's a better fit. And through that discourse of, what are they looking for? It often leads to other questions. And then I think it's about listening to the person and understanding what they're looking for and being able to apply that to if it's going to be a good fit for the company.
Right, right. And I know just from working with you and then actually talking with your boss a little bit that one of the things that makes you really, really good at this is the connection that you're having with these folks, both in text now and then, of course, in the phone call as well. So, and it's really hard to kind of capture that when it comes to what makes one person better at something than another. I think if I had to boil it down, what seems like that you do better than a lot of recruiting coordinators is that personal connection, being able to really help that person feel important. Would you feel that's part of the secret sauce here?
I do. I think we all want to feel like we're being heard and listened to, but that we're also important. And I think being honest with people is helpful too. So as I was saying, it's our company is not the right fit for everyone, and everyone is not the right fit for us. And so it's about finding that right fit and being honest with people up front, but also being other centered in the sense that we're really trying to help them, as a person to embark on a new journey. For a lot of the people that I'm talking to, this is new. They're coming into real estate as a new industry. And a lot of them literally come to me and say, I just don't even know the questions to ask. And so it's just being able to talk through some of those things and maybe sometimes giving them a little more time than, a quick 5-minute call. Sometimes my calls are 10, 15, sometimes even longer. And that's not the norm, but sometimes people just need to have some good quality time. And similar to, what I was saying earlier about texting, it doesn't always take a lot. Sometimes it's just a matter of reading through my notes again and thinking, oh, okay, I remember we had talked about this last time. I'm going to make sure I address that in this next text, and it's not just the template.
Right, absolutely. So let's talk about a little bit of we're kind of structurally kind of going through the process here. So the beginning part of the process really is geared towards bringing that person to the place where they're ready for an interview with the manager. And then, of course, getting in front of the manager, having a dialogue with them. What happens after that? What happens after that interview happens?
Yeah. So again, depending on where they are in the process, some could just ready to sign on, and it can be a quick turnaround. And I have that situation often. But for the most part, I'm typically sending my prospects to the manager no earlier than 50% through the class. And what I tell them is that there's a couple of reasons. One is that the whole process takes, for most people, several months, and so you're doing an interview 2 months before you're even hireable. That's a long time for a really busy manager. So that's one reason I tell them. And the other one is I'm like, look, hey, you're going through a class that's going to help you with material for this interview. If you go in earlier, how are you going to speak to some of the questions that they may ask, or how are you going to understand? So that's one of my kind of rules of thumb, is not to send my prospects into the interview too early. And I know a lot of them may want to jump the gun on that a little bit. So I have to kind of talk them down from that sometimes, and make sure that they know that I'm actually interested in their best interest in sending them to that interview prepared. So that's one aspect of it. But once they actually get through that interview, assuming that they still have, either like the finals or exams still to take, I'm still engaging them. So I don't hand them off to the manager once they've done the interview. I'm still continuing to engage them, both on encouragement, on, if there's test prep resources I might have that would be helpful, I send them to them. I send encouraging messages. So again, one of my templates is, hey, I know your test is coming up and just wanted to wish you luck on it. Following up after the exam, hey, how'd it go? I'm excited to hear, so it's those kinds of, kind of care that comes after it. And even, hey, I had, like, just this morning I had someone who said, hey, I passed the exam. I'm super excited. I'm like, oh, congratulations. I'm super excited for you. Do you want me to help reconnect you with the manager? Yes, please. Would you do that? So that's one of the ways I'm helpful to kind of help bridge that gap again, once they've had that first initial interview.
Right. So what I'm hearing is that it's a pretty somewhat long. I mean, it could be a month or 2 months or 3 months long, and you're engaging people early in the process. You're staying connected with them, it related to what it is actually they're doing, getting them in front of the manager at the right time, and then doing some really consistent and thoughtful follow-up after the interview. So it really is a beginning to end process of really bringing someone through this getting into real estate stage of their life.
Absolutely. And being there for them when they have questions that come up, because sometimes that even happens to people. Will say, hey, I know this isn't like normal time for our follow-up, but I had this question, and just being open to that as well.
Right. So do you find that if you're engaging someone like this, staying connected with them all along, do you find that you lose many of those people to competitors, or is this the glue that kind of keeps them engaged? This is the high quality people engaged in the process?
Well, I mean, to be fair, there are things that we can't control. I mean, I can't control what the company charges. I can't control commission splits, and I have to sometimes not take it personal if someone chooses to not come on board. So there's that element of it. But I think that both, I would like to think that some of it has to do with me. But we have great managers too. And I think it's really important to have that good relationship with the managers as well, so that they know I'm also here to help them. So I think that's part of it too. If, again, I mentioned that example earlier, if I have someone coming to me saying, hey, I just passed the exam, you better believe it doesn't matter what that person says. I'm texting that manager to tell them, hey, this person just passed the exam. If you want first dibs, you better get in there.
Yeah. And it helps, I think, if you've had a relationship initially, right? They trust you. They look to you for information. Obviously, the manager hopefully has already met with them at that point. So there is an engagement here that happens, and hopefully that can be delivered. That will produce a return later in the
Right.
process. Well,
Yeah.
let's pivot a little bit into managers. You have a lot of managers that you work with. Now Fox and Roach has some great managers. And that's it's always better to work with some high quality managers, but still having 75 of them that you're managing at one time, and you're the go between that prospect and the manager. Well, what are some of the things that you've learned about working with managers that make this process better and more effective?
I think it's really important for them to know that we're here to help as recruiters, and the more we can communicate with them and find out what they're looking for and how we can best help them, the more that they're going to trust us to be looking out for them as well. And that is that kind of tightrope balance of helping the prospects and the candidates who I kind of feel like I'm kind of their cheerleader with the manager, but also the manager needs to know I have their back as well. And so there's that fine line and of trying to balance both of those. But it's really, with my managers, and obviously we have some areas in our market that are more high volume than others. So there's some managers I don't deal with quite as frequently, but the ones that we're engaging with weekly, it's kind of that, like you said, building that trust with them, making sure I understand what their needs are. And I even have managers who will tell me, hey, I think I need to take a pause. And I'm like, okay, we're on it, and we're taking care of their needs as well. So definitely that kind of nuanced balance of those. But yeah, so when we have managers who maybe are a little slower, and I learned who they are, some are really fast. I know I don't have to engage as much with the ones who are faster and more on it. And then the ones who I know need a little more encouragement, I make sure I do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the word nuance is good, because it really, there's a balance between, staying on board with the prospect, getting someone through the process, and then having the manager engage that person at the right time. But then if things get stalled along the way, it's so easy to be that person that's annoying the manager, or they have other things that they're working on. So how have you balanced that? How have you figured out the balance between annoying and still keeping the process moving?
Well, sometimes I do feel like I'm annoying, and I will say I hope I'm not being annoying. But I think they can appreciate that for the most part. I'm just here to help, and I try. So I would never obviously text a manager, certainly more than once, or to remind them of something, more than once a day. And I typically give them even a couple of days. But if there is a timeline between when the manager's responding, I'm making sure that I go back to that prospect and let them know. Again, certainly would want to make sure I'm communicating that the managers are busy, and they know that that they're that the candidate's important, but that the prospect and the managers are busy, and we're working on trying to get something put together. So I think it's just that communication, making sure you're on board with both elements, both people, and trying to help connect the two, and communicating frequently, but not, like we said, not pestering them, but just making sure that I think it's more communication is better, and so I don't want to like I said, do something more than once maybe in a day, but I definitely want to make sure I am communicating.
Well, one more metric thing before we wrap up here is one of the things that Fox and Roach, I think, does better than almost any other company I've seen. They're very selective about who they hire, first of all. So out of that 3,600 a year, there's only 11% that actually get interviews. And of course, you do a lot of screening of people. Some people self-select out of the process, but by the time a person gets to the manager, that 11%, then after the interview happens, 40% of those people actually become agents in the company. So that's an incredibly high conversion rate compared to many other companies that do this. So why is that happening, and what is it about your process that makes your conversion rate so successful in that area?
Well, I think we obviously have really great managers. I mean, again, I work closely with them, over, last couple of years. So, I think that's can't be, underestimated. That's kind of really the thrust of it. They're really fantastic people to work for. And I know that because I work with them in a different capacity. So there's that part of it. But, honestly, I think it's really just a large part of helping those candidates who, once they've met with the manager and are in that decision process, I always make myself available, again, trying to dance that line. But hey, do you have feedback? Do you have questions? Do you have concerns? Anything I can help with? They know that I'm kind of that go-between that you were talking about. And so if they have questions or concerns, that's sometimes something I can help with as well, and to kind of navigate that for them with the manager. And, again, having that level of trust and relationship between both the prospects and the managers, that they know I'm looking out for everyone's best interests. I can navigate that in a way that's not going to, like I said, offend anyone. So I'm actually trying to help. And so those are some of the things that I'm kind of doing post interview. But really, for the most part, it's just kind of staying engaged and just saying, how can I help? How can we make this happen?
Yeah, and I think you've done a good job of kind of describing in one sense, the complexity of this. There's a frequency side to it. There's a technology side to it. There's a personal connection side. You've got to have good managers on the other side. The prospects have to be pretty good prospects to stay engaged in the process. But on the other hand, just through some of the efficiencies that you've engaged, you've been able to scale this and do this at a high volume level, so that a lot of this gets done, day in and day out without any real hiccups.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a lot of management. That was one of the things I had to learn, again, with the scale that we have, the volume that we have. Some of it was just kind of making sure, aside from, like I said, our TA Text platform that we use is fabulous. It's fantastic. It makes my job way easier with the actual technology that I have to help me. So I'm able to have, like we talked about, the pipeline and the different stages, and then I have different tasks and reminders and all that good stuff. So sure, there's all of that, but it's definitely a managing and not being too overwhelmed. And so trying to look at each day and what am I going to accomplish today, and making sure I'm addressing the people who are engaging first. That's, one of my ways to prioritize. If they're engaging first, that's the top priority. And then I'll go and look at some of the ones who maybe I've been sitting there for a little while, I haven't engaged them. So maybe I'll go do another little touch point, something like that.
Yeah. Well, it's just fascinating to hear how you've kind of processed through it, how you found your own systems, how you've used the tools, how you worked into this organization and really became really good at it. As we wrap up, is there any if someone was just starting this or was really struggling in this role, is there any advice that you would give them to help kind of get them unstuck?
I think definitely getting a system that works for you. On what you're going to accomplish each day and how you're going to do it, how you prioritize things. But honestly, I think really one of the main keys for me, what I do, and apparently it's been successful, but it's just kind of part of who I am, is just to make sure, what I'm doing is personal, a personal touch, and making sure I'm investing, the time, whether it's length of time that you're in. If you're just getting started, it's going to take some time, obviously, to gain that trust with managers, to build that trust. But that being said, you will do that more quickly as long as you are making them feel like that you are trustworthy. And so doing specific things to do that, being engaged with the managers, being engaged with the prospects, looking through and processing and not just hitting the button. It's super easy just to pull that template up and hit send and wash my hands of it. But,
right.
That's faster, but I think it's also, less engaging with the prospect, and I think they can tell.
Yeah, no, I think they can, and I think that's one of the things that really differentiates the work that you do and the success that you've had versus some other people that in other companies that haven't had as much success as Fox and Roach. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you sharing the amazing details of what you're doing at Fox and Roach. And now for those of you that are doing the hard work of recruiting each day, take what you've learned and go make a difference.